Hello, I'm Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and welcome to my blog, where it's my pleasure as well as mission to highlight my creative journey in hopes of inspiring you, giving you specific takeaways, and anything in between. Before I get to things, I would like to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. That way, you get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It truly does mean a lot to me, as I hope it does to you. So it's kind of always interesting looking back. I do these every week and they encompass a week. And man, uh, sometimes there's just so much that can happen within a week, right? Sometimes a week can feel like a lifetime. Other times it can feel like the most slowest, boring thing ever. But a lot of things happened last week, right? To kind of give you a rundown, I entered the visual effects phase of the proof of concept for a feature film that I'm aiming to do. I'm working on the pitch material for that. I'm also working on revising revising a book that I've been working on. Of course, we had the Super Bowl. Uh, I had a lot of my friends' birthdays actually apparently were last week, so that's kind of fascinating to me. Um, and then as part of that, it also marked another anniversary of my dad's passing. So a lot of stuff all at once. Not necessarily by design, but just kind of happenstance, and that's okay. You can either read into it or you don't, right? You just kind of take them as they go. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. In general, just I guess a productive week, I could call it. So, which is good. That's what you want. So, I guess let's start with the movie overall. Uh, you know, my friends and I, we joke about certain things where like you do a draft of it, and then it gets to a point, and it's like, all right, let's now hit the hot button, right? It's almost like in when you're racing cars, right? Like let's say in Fast and Furious, and you hit the NOS button, right? And then boom, you just all of a sudden like just gain the speed and go fast and over the finish line, right? So hitting the hot button, it's like you take something that's kind of just bland, and all of a sudden, boom, it goes to the next level. And we always kind of joke about that because let's say you're editing something for so long, and you have the footage, and the edits are good and all that, but it's not color corrected, and because it's not in that phase yet. But then once you apply color correction to it, it's like, damn, it takes it from like this bland just image to woo, this that's the hot button, right? We hit the hot button and it looks good. So the reason I'm saying this is because with the proof of concept, right? So if you're unfamiliar, proof of concept is basically like a 3-minute representation of whatever the feature film would be. Some people sometimes make like a trailer. Sometimes people make like write a specific short film for it. I literally just took 3 minutes out of the script and was like, this is it's not a standalone piece necessarily, but it's a good viewpoint into what the film would be and whatnot, right? So that's the proof of concept. We filmed it using a green screen, and I've talked about that ad nauseum, so I'm not going to get into it. You are welcome to check out my previous blogs to kind of really hear that. But when you do that, you have all this green everywhere. So you edit it, and you don't see any of the backgrounds or any of the objects and so forth, right? So you just kind of see the actors, and it looks good, right? But it's not 100% the same because it's all make believe. So now that it's in the visual effects phase, it's like we just applied the hot button, right? Like, and not to say that it is complete, but I was looking at various people and their work, and I was talking with them, and we were having creative ideas bouncing off, and it's in a way kind of like dating someone where you want to find the right fit. And so in that regard, I finally found someone that I really meshed with. I meshed with the other people as well, but this person just on a different level. He really understood what I was going for, and I really loved his work. So, like, let's do this. So, boom, and then right now, the way the process works is we're just kind of working on, for lack of a better term, templates. Meaning, there's various shots, and of course, an effect will have to be applied to multiple versions of those shots. Those shots throughout. But it's like, let's take one shot, let's apply it to that, and let's really work it so that we get the visual representation we want, and then of course we can apply it to the other ones, right? So the exciting part is, I got the early rounds, and of course there's notes. It's not like it's perfect right off the bat. That would be, that'd be kind of like a miracle in some sense. But you can start to see it, right? You finally get to see the movie as it's intended to be. And so it's like, damn, now with this VFX stuff, we really hit the hot button, right? So it's exciting stuff. And all in all, I think it'll be about 2 to 3 weeks to really drive it to completion, which is exciting. If it takes longer, ultimately, that's fine too. It's being worked on, and it's very exciting. So I look forward to that. And yeah, really, really good stuff. I'm can't wait to share, and share I will once it is complete. So there's that aspect of it, right? Really, hitting the hot button, and all projects need the hot button. We like the joke. Now, as part of that, I'm once I was obviously initially involved very heavily because I had to interview these people and so forth and find the right person. But now that we've had conversations, everything's laid out, I essentially get to take a step back, and I'm more managing something rather than having to be a maker, right? There's kind of a dichotomy, you're either the maker or the manager. And you can fluctuate between both, right? And oftentimes we all do, day to day, job by job, or however you want to, week to week, even however you want to term it. So in this sense, I've gotten into more the manager phase, which also, as far as the VFX side of the project is concerned, there's not really that tasking for me. So that means I have more free time. So, okay, how do I use that free time? Well, the other stuff that I'm dealing with and have to do as part of this, right? Because all of this is in service of trying to package this film to production companies, distributors, investors, and the like, so that way we can get the funding required to make this movie. So, as part of that, one of the pinnacle things that we'll need is a pitch deck. And this is like a representation of the movie. It's got various info of budgets and story, actors, the crew, films that are similar, and so forth. And I had done a draft of it, but then I was like, okay, I know the draft's not perfect, so let me. And I, for some reason, I've been kind of avoiding it because I don't know, maybe I was just like spreading myself too creatively, was focused on proof of concept, and now that it's off and running, I can now really dedicate time to this. So I really put time and effort into that, and really changed up the flow, and looked at the text and changed up the text and put in pictures and so forth. Now, what I was doing isn't the final visual representation of it. I was just literally in Keynote. You can do this in PowerPoint as well. I was literally just kind of laying things out, so that way then someone else can take that and translate it into a more visual aspect, right? But I want them to have the text needed, the content needed, which includes the pictures, to then translate that over. So, that's kind of what I did. And it's not 100% perfect in terms of the content, but it's close enough where now, it's not going to hinder the visual process. So now we're kind of there. But as we're there, the thing of it is, it really starts with the cover, right? The cover's got to look good, and the cover sets the tone. So in essence, the cover is the movie poster, really, if you kind of think about it in that way. So, I've always had an idea of what the poster should be, but then now in that sense, now interviewing people to take this pitch deck, content wise, and then translate it visually. As I'm going through it and interviewing people, I realized, okay, before we even worry about the pitch deck, let's focus on the movie poster, quote unquote, because that will dictate the visual style, the iconography and so forth of the actual pitch deck and the layout. So, it's kind of always like almost two steps forward, one step back, two steps forward, one step back. And so I was like, okay, let's take a step back. And, so everyone now that I'm working with, it's like, okay, let's focus on the poster first. Let's get that as good as we want. And then we can move on to the rest. And, what was kind of interesting, well, not interesting, I guess, but it's always, and especially like, I don't know, maybe because we're also in the pandemic, for me living alone, there's nobody to bounce ideas off of ever. I mean, I guess I could talk to my dog, but there's not going to be quite the response that I'm looking for. So, you sit with these ideas and things like that, and you kind of go in a certain direction. But I was like, you know what? Let me call one of the people involved in the project, and just let me get her input. And I'm so glad I did, because the feedback she offered was really fantastic. And sometimes, people are well intentioned, because I called like one other person that I trust, and I kind of pitched something to them, and sometimes you get the response of like, yeah, okay, that sounds great, go for it. And while that's encouraging, sometimes it doesn't lead to the good product. It's not like, don't worry about hurting my feelings. And I don't think ultimately they were just trying to be a yes person, but it was like they just, they just didn't at that point. I think, part of it was they were in the middle of their work day, no different than I was in mine. We just kind of called each other during the lunch break. So, that the notion of being creative in that moment, is a little bit stifled, just because given the circumstances. And I could have called that person. They probably would have came up with great stuff. But, I called somebody else, and I was like, hey, let me just get your input on this. And boy, like just within like a 20-minute conversation, the ideas that were flowing out and really elevating it and offering, I was like, okay, cool. And that's what I love. I mean, for me, I really love dialogue, because there's a back and forth. They can ask a question that I didn't even consider, and then I could start to be like, okay, well, here's this. And then that opens up a doorway. So I don't know, for me, I do value creativity from the standpoint of a collaborative art, because I don't pretend to know all the answers, and the person in particular that I was talking to, I didn't realize it at the time, but, I just had an instinct that this person would have a great viewpoint into what I'm going for. And the person does have a marketing branding background. So I was like, this is really cool. And, not to say that I haven't done that stuff, but it's not my strong suit like it is for this person. I have other strengths. And so it's great that, they fill that weak spot for me. And that's why, art is really collaborative at the end of the day, at least for me. I can't imagine it any sort of way different than that. And so, yeah, I'm excited, and we're moving forward. Like I said, I'm going to focus on the poster, and then from there, that'll dictate the other stuff. So really looking forward to that. As far as everything else, one of the things I decided to do last week was to just kind of, how people say like, hey, if someone's on your mind, reach out to them. And especially kind of given the circumstances of 2020, we all miss our friends and things like that. And we probably think about a lot of our friends. And so the idea of reaching out to somebody is nice, right? But how often we do it? Do we do it? I know for me, I always kind of see those memes or posts and so forth and think, oh, that's cool. But never really do it, because it feels awkward or whatever the else. Sometimes you're like, well, does this person really want to hear from me? And is it going to just be cheesy? Whatever the case may be. There's this fear that sets in. So I was like, you know what? Let me go for it. Let me set an intention. Let me be honest about it. Let me write something thoughtful, and I'll make a list of people that I want to reach out to, and I'll reach out to them and be like, hey, And I kind of literally opened it up, like so often I see these posts about reaching out to people if they're on your mind. I think it's a nice thing, but I rarely do it. So I didn't want to be that person. So I just wanted to let you know that you were on my mind, and I hope all is well. Something to the effect of that, and then some personalized stuff as well to each individual. And yeah, it sparked some really good catch up sessions via text, or phone calls with certain people. But yeah, it just it was nice because it created real human interactions, and it uplifted their day, and because it uplifted their day, it uplifted my day because they were so sincere in what they said back to me. And I think it's a thing that we don't do enough of. And I think you can say it's the well, the embarrassing part of it. Other times you could blame it on not having enough time, and it's like, if we don't make that time, we're never going to have that time. And to me, human interactions in these relationships, that's ultimately why we're here, right? That's what I mean. I would imagine art that you are creating yourself is about that same thing. It's about human truths and human interactions and so forth. And it's like, we can't just talk the talk. We also got to walk the walk in our own lives, not just in our own art, right? Talking the talk is in our art, but walking the walk is in real life. So yeah, there's that aspect of it. The other aspect that I was doing was just kind of revising a book, and revision's easy in that sense. Obviously, like, there's an art form to it, so not everyone can necessarily do it, and I don't claim to be the best, but it's easy enough in the sense that you're not having to engage creatively. So I can, if I have a little bit of downtime, let's say like 30 minutes here, an hour here, whatever the case may be, I can just kind of go into that because it doesn't require my creative brain. It just requires more of an analytical brain and feedback and so forth. And, so you're fixing up grammar and things of that nature, right? So I've been doing that. Um, and, the other thing that kind of I thought about was, I remember when I was a kid, uh, let's say 7 years old, I like declared that I wanted to be a genie when I grew up, which is kind of fascinating to me because, in some sense, for all intents and purposes, I kind of am a genie. And follow along here, right? Don't just dismiss it. But I I value myself when people call me and you know request feedback or advice and so forth. Or conversely, with the projects that I do, I've gotten some really good feedback of like, hey, thanks for allowing me to flex my creative muscle by letting me be part of your project. And that's really cool. And so, in some sense, I kind of am a genie. Not that I do, magically wave like this wand or whatever and boom, make stuff happen for them. It's a lot more nuanced because it's all work. And most of the time, like, if whatever advice I may give, ultimately they're the ones doing the work, right? So that's the key component of it. They're the ones ultimately uh, that are in charge. And, it would be nothing if, my part's easy. It's their part is hard. The doing the work, I think a lot of times we don't associate as like the hard part, but it's the person who does the work that is, the one that, ultimately, like, again, a lot of us are analytical and we know the right thing to do and say. And so, sometimes we just need that bouncing board, but nonetheless, it's the work aspect of it that's the tough part. But in my own way, yeah, I kind of like to view myself as a genie because I do kind of push and try to help create the atmosphere or the environment, if you will, to allow for people's dreams to come true. And that's a really cool thought, and how intriguing, right? It's one of those things that you can kind of look back and like, oh, that does make sense with what I do. Like that's as silly as a statement as it seemed, like I really had it in my heart to like just really help people's dreams, certainly creatively, come true. And that to me is a worthwhile pursuit. That to me is a worthwhile use of my time on this earth, my life, and so forth. Right. So yeah, very, that's the way I choose to look at it, at least. Uh, the other aspect, So in 2007, my dad passed away, and so on Wednesday, February 3rd was the anniversary of that. And it's interesting, one of the things that I kind of always look at, my mom posted something about it, and I always knew him as my dad, and then conversely, my mom, she knew him in a light that I can't necessarily begin to imagine, right? It's no different than, like, let's say, grandparents, right? Your grandparent is your grandparent, and that's kind of how you view them. But obviously, before that, they had a completely different life, and they were teenagers, they were young adults, and so forth. Parents of their own before they became grandparents. And not that there's anything wrong with that, right? And no one's at fault and things like that. But it's just very fascinating to me how most times, even with the people that are, so close to us, right? Like family members, in this case, a parent, that we still just know the surface level of who they are as a being. And there's no real message beyond just kind of, it's something fascinating to think about. And there's, like I said, there's not necessarily a fix, other than perhaps asking and things like that. But even then, you're still only you can only get so deep, right? And yeah, as I said, it's no one's fault. It's just kind of the way things are. But yeah, I don't know. It was just kind of fascinating to consider and think about in that sense. As far as the Super Bowl, I'm not going to really talk about it, but apart from the fact of my joke is like it was like watching a high school scrimmage between varsity and JV. But I'm not going to pretend to know more beyond that. I'm not a football analyst or anything like that. Anyway, that's kind of in a nutshell what I've been up to. I know, I said it was a lot. Maybe it might not seem like a lot, but a lot of, for me, a lot of, once you get into the depth of things and start working on those things on a day-to-day basis, yeah, that stuff adds up and things like that. And that's what I've been up to. So thank you for joining me. I hope this has been inspirational in some sense. I hope this offers you certain tangible takeaways. If you have any questions or thoughts of your own, by all means, please share. I would be more than glad to converse with you. And thank you, and I hope to see you next time.